Will McAvoy, first of all, isn't real, and he's not based on anyone real. It's the product of my imagination and Jeff Daniels' imagination. But I think I would watch Will McAvoy. He's good at his job, and he asks follow-up questions. He doesn't let guests get away with it.
Would you say that nowadays journalism is not rigorous as it should be?
I think that nowadays journalism, media is a lot. There's that you can't make one blanket statement about journalism. And I think, like in any field, there's good journalism and there's not so good journalism, and that you, as a consumer, have to find the good journalism.
I just watched the first episode of the second season, and I know you're including Occupy Wall Street,
yes.
Libya. What about the 2012 elections?
Yes, the season ends with a two-part episode that takes place on election night. It covers the period from August 2011, the fall of Tripoli, to November 2012 election night.
Let me ask you, maybe it's obvious, but why are you including those events? Because they were prominent, I guess, or?
The news events that are covered on the show come second to the stories that I'm telling about the characters. So generally speaking, sometimes there's a news event where I know, like last year with killing Osama bin Laden, that I knew that there was an episode that I wanted to have take place that night. So sometimes there are news events where that'll be how the process starts. But usually I'll say, okay, do I want the next episode to begin the next day after this episode took place, a week later, a month later, 6 months later? I'll make that decision, and then I'll look. There's a room that's completely wallpapered with every possible news event from the last 18 months. That's how the year begins. And I'll look up there and with the staff, and we'll decide that one would be good for whatever reason, either because it was a big news event or sometimes because it was a small one that no one heard about. But most of the time, because it'll be kind of interesting to have in the background. One of the values for me in setting the show in the recent past and having it be a weird kind of historical drama is that you can have the dynamic where the audience knows more than the characters do at some point. Benghazi, for instance, that when they get a news alert that protests have erupted outside the American embassy in Cairo, and now another one has erupted outside the American consulate in Benghazi, the audience immediately knows what's about to happen, and the characters don't, and that's an interesting dynamic.
Do you think in America there's this kind of propaganda that make us believe that it's the only country who knows freedom?
Yeah.
But it's a little bullshit, or
it is. That's something that in the first 5 minutes of the series that Will addressed this idea that America is the only country that has freedom. We're very good at it. We ought to be proud of it, but there's no reason to belittle other countries. But most of the world has freedom.
What I love about the show is that it has, in a way, two narrations, but they blend very well. The narration of the actual news, and then the things going behind the scenes within the news, the group of people that make the news possible. Can you tell us a little what's going to happen this second season? What can we expect with relationships and all that?
I can tell you a little bit, but I can't give much away.
Okay.
There is, I can tell you that there is an event that goes through the entire season that threatens the careers of everyone involved. That it's entirely possible that none of these people are ever going to work in news again. And then there are events that happen to individuals on the show. Maggie, in particular, we see something happens that is going to change her forever. Things will happen where one of them will just simply get too close to a story, and it'll become very important to them on a personal level, and they need to step back for a moment.
Aaron, could you tell us what's Operation Genoa?
I can tell you the beginning, but I won't tell you the end. Operation Genoa, which is the story that takes us through the entire season, was inspired by something that really happened at CNN in 1998 when they reported on something called Tailwind, which was a report that alleged that the U.S. Army in 1970 in Laos used chemical weapons on about 100 civilians. Genoa is roughly the same thing. They've discovered, and it takes several episodes for this to become real for them because it's so unbelievable. The first time they hear it, they don't believe it. They've discovered that in an extraction, which is rescuing two hostages, two Marines taken hostage in Afghanistan, that the Army may have used chemical weapons on a village that had civilians in it in order to free these hostages. And they air the report, and then I can't tell you what happens after that.
Last question: how much do you think the newsroom has brought into the tables or into the dining rooms of everybody the discussion of freedom, news, check the facts, don't accept tabloid culture or the manipulation of government when it comes to news?
You know, my goal when I write anything, certainly the newsroom isn't an exception, is simply to captivate you for however long I've asked for your attention. My goal is no bigger than to entertain you, to have some fun for this hour. If those kinds of discussions happen at kitchen tables, in classrooms, or on a bus, that's a wonderful, wonderful bonus, but it's not what I'm shooting.